Matty Russell, welcome to the show, mate.
G'day, Jared. Great to be here.
How you going?
Thanks for having me.
No, pleasure.
How'd you find my number in the phone book?
Yeah, mate, the Fox Sports database, you know how it is. Mate, just for the listeners, some people might hear your voice and think, I've heard that before. Sort of tell everyone a bit about yourself and what you do exactly.
Well, this is a Illawarra podcast, and 100%. I've lived down here since 1998 actually. So came down from my most recent job with Win TV in Orange and started at Win TV Wollongong. And despite going to Fox in 2005, we've just stayed here because apart from a bit of traffic on the outskirts of Sydney, generally it's good. And the first 40 minutes is through the national park, so I'm not complaining, and great part of the world. Don't tell anyone about it.
No. I hear things about like places like Adelaide as well, like apparently worst kept secret. Everyone in Adelaide's happy that everyone doesn't like Adelaide.
I like Adelaide.
You like Adelaide? Yeah.
But I like Fig Tree and Illawarra more, so I'm still here.
100%, yeah. Born and bred local. Or not born and bred, actually. We'll get into it. So you're a country boy, aren't you?
Well, I went to Orange for my first job. I was born and raised in a place called Kent Lynn, which is an outlying suburb of Campbelltown. And I sort of describe myself as a country upbringing because back then it was mum and dad ran pharmacies in in Campbelltown, and they had a property at Kent Lynn which was close to the Georges River, surrounded by bush, and we grew up swinging off rope swings and jumping into the river and exploring 7 acres of bush, which was a lot of fun. And then after that I went to the Scott School in Bathurst for a couple of years, and then Canberra for uni, and then Orange for best part of a decade from my first job, Central Western Daily newspaper, and then to Win Television. So I spent a lot of time in country areas, even though I was technically raised in Western Sydney.
Well travelled. Mate, you sound like me, because I was actually born in Campbelltown as well, but
there you go.
I moved down here like a month old, so it was pretty much... Okay. I classify myself as a Westie, but just like only by a technicality. Mate, you're doing breakfast radio this week. Tell us a bit about what you're doing there and who with.
Yeah, I'm doing it with SEN, Sports Entertainment Network, which has come across my radar over the last couple of years, courtesy Andrew Voss and Greg Alexander, who needed someone to fill in. So I sort of labelled myself the ring-in. Done a little bit of radio over the years. I find it a lot of fun. It's less scripted, obviously, than television. I enjoy that element of it. And so that's fun, but brutal in the morning because a 3 a.m. alarm. Let me tell you, the trip from Wollongong to Sydney at 3 a.m. is good.
Oh, it's perfect.
Very fast, not much traffic. So that's about the only good thing about an early alarm. So, a bit of radio on top of the Fox Sports commitments is good. I enjoy it, and I'm lucky to work with those two. And even though it's an early alarm, you've got to pinch yourself. You're sitting there in the morning getting people texting in or ringing in, wanting to talk about sport. You think, how lucky am I? There are people out there who, A, want to engage with you, and B, talk about a topic that's close to your heart, sport. So, blessed, very blessed.
It's the dream, isn't it?
It is.
Mate, so, for those who don't know, we've met briefly a couple of times at the Fox Sports newsroom. Obviously, you doing NRL Tonight, which we'll obviously get into, and myself doing a bit of work up there as well. But there's a running joke going around the Fox Sports newsroom at the moment, and it's that Matty Russell is never home. Because I would say... How's the footy off season been? But you actually haven't had an off season.
No, I'm lucky. I get to be involved with basketball, which I knew precious little about. Growing up, it was cricket, it was rugby league, and a bit of soccer maybe. I'm of that generation. It was cricket over summer, footy in winter. But when I came to Wollongong, I had to get to know basketball and the Illawarra Hawks because it was one of your main beats. We had the National League team, and I was lucky enough to get to know blokes like Matt Campbell, Glenn Saville, Brendan Joyce, the coach, and other players. Great fellas. And I fell in love with the game more and more. And then Fox, when Larry Kesselman bought the NBL, Fox had a broadcast deal, and I was asked to get involved with the actual commentary in it. I'd previously reported on it and been a sideline reporter for a Win Television coverage of the Hawks way back in the late 1990s. And I jumped at it, and it's a lot of fun. Great sport, and sort of you broaden your commentary base by learning other sports. And so I've been doing that over summer with a bit of radio. And I've sort of got a rule that if a station rings me, you watch me increase my workload here. If a station wants to ring me and preview the NBL or preview the NRL round, I remember what it was like being a young journo or a young person in the media, and how hard it was sometimes. So I say yes invariably, unless there's a commitment with a family event or just a reason I can't physically do it, I'll say yes. So, and then you sit down and you talk basketball or rugby league with whatever radio station rings you up during the week.
Yeah,
but that's good.
It's a good little life lesson, a good little motto to have. Just say yes, particularly when
just say yes.
When like I'm gonna speak for myself personally. A year ago, if you told me I was working at Fox Sports, I would have said, "You're kidding me, right?"
Yeah.
So now it gets to the point where if you're offered shifts, it might be an extra weekend or two, and might be extra time, but you're not going to say no because you would have killed to be in the spot this time last year. And I can imagine for yourself growing up as well, and even still now, you're probably still thinking that.
Yeah, and by saying yes to doing radio and radio interviews and other things like podcasts, it helps keep you in stride.
100%.
And also, one interview, one appearance, one podcast fuels you with more information for the next one, and on it goes. So it's not really work either. Let's be honest. We're not on the end of a shovel. We're not digging ditches. We're doing fun stuff. I keep pretty busy. Some family members say I'm too busy, but I enjoy it.
I know myself personally. I used to, when I was at uni, I used to mow lawns while I was at uni and high school and all that, just in between with my dad, for example. And it sort of teaches you a work ethic, but it also teaches you what you want to do and whether you want to do it or not. Did you ever have that growing up? Because I feel like the mentality.
So Dad ran pharmacies, and they were long days for him. He owned them, so owners were always there. And when we got old enough, we worked in the chemist shops. It was Hawthorn and Russell chemist shops at Campbelltown. As you're coming through very early teens and late teens, if they're long days for an adult, imagine what they're like for a boy/young man. And sometimes it wasn't the most invigorating work either, unpacking boxes or taking boxes to the rubbish tip, etc., etc. But it did teach me those days working for Dad about, just get through it. Just work. Put your head down, put your bum up, and the day will end eventually, and you'll get a few dollars for it as reward. So I'm not the best broadcaster, I'm not the most brilliant voice, a long way from it. But one thing I've always thought is I'll match anyone when it comes to work and my willingness to do it and the hours I'll give, etc., etc. Because that was what was bred into me by my dad when I was working with him at the chemist shops. Yeah.
So, I've been even just thinking about that because not only do you do basketball, not only do you do footy, you do the darts as well when they come down the gong.
Bit of darts, which is fun. A bit of netball as well, which really tested me because clearly I didn't play netball either, and that's only been over the last few seasons. And again, the colleagues that you work with, you feel so much gratitude to them for accepting you, for helping to educate you, for working with you. That was certainly the case in the netball sphere. And I enjoy the netball. I enjoy the basketball. The darts, again, came at me because Fox Sports was involved in the coverage of the World Series of Darts. And it came to, originally it was North Queensland and another venue. It might actually have been Wollongong. It's been in Wollongong now for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And I got to meet Stuart Pike, who's a English commentator, Super League, but also darts, also versatile to the nth degree, does many sports. Great fella, loved his league. We sort of started up a friendship now, and each year when the darts come to Wollongong, it's a sort of highlight of my year. Pikey comes out, I take him to the rugby league, and he sort of accepts me in the darts. But I think it's magnificent as a bit of a sidelight what darts does. They take a small round circle and make it a stadium event because they put the action on the big screens, they've got the music, they've got the drinking and partying, and they've got just like an event. I thought, wow, so many sports could learn from this, thinking outside the immediate what the immediate focus of the sport is. They've got the smallest focus in the world, a little dartboard, yet they fill Wynn Stadium, sell it out with more than 5,000 people.
None of them will be able to see directly at the dartboard.
No, because of what it is, it's an event. So I thought, imagine sports that are great to watch on a much bigger scale, then said, well, let's go bigger again and make it a true stadium event. Darts has already done it, and there's lessons in there for other sports to where they can go, untapped potential.
Are you a fan of the darts now?
I am. Get to know the players. It's great. And I took my son last year, who was lucky enough actually to sit between Pikey and the other commentators.
Oh, that'd be perfect.
And he was backstage watching them commentate, and Stu sort of made him feel welcome and showed him how they do it. And, it was a bit of a treat for him.
Yeah. Sounds like Jared's dream. I'm a fan of the dance as well.
There
you go.
Next year, let me know.
Yeah. Well, I've been talking about mates for coming in. So there you go. But,
dress up.
So dress up. Yeah. What's your go-to? What's the best dress up you've seen at the Gong Darts?
Oh, there's too many outfits to mention. There really is. I couldn't remember. You just look out and you feel like you're on a Hollywood movie set. Every single character you've ever imagined is there. I love the players too. The two Australians, the way that they got involved with the crowd was outstanding. But the outfits, weird, wonderful, very weird, absolutely wonderful. Yeah, good times.
I've got a highlight from the World Darts Championship, though, obviously over in London over our summer. The favourite one I've seen online is a bunch of mates on a stag do. Everyone dressed up as a chip, a French fry, and the one bloke on his stag do dressed up as a seagull, and they're all running through these streets just chasing each other.
That's good.
But who's a highlight in terms of players you've chatted to on the tour?
The darts tour. I remember Hohepa out of New Zealand. He was really good, representing the Kiwis on the tour. The Wizard, the one and only Wizard who, if Australians could name one darts player, it's probably Simon Whitlock. And he, again, sit down and chat with him. There were a couple who were big fans of rugby league, and I'm there having a chat to them about darts, and they're talking to me about rugby league.
Yeah,
sort of back to front.
Back and forth.
So that was really interesting. But then you get to the Luke Littler in darts last year. He's a phenomenon, and to have him at 17 years of age come to Wollongong, to be able to meet him, and actually Pikey did me a favour because I'd run him left, right and centre to different rugby league events. He got a dart board from the World Darts Championship and had every player sign it. So Luke Littler signed it. So and then, of course, he went on to do what he did this year over summer, our summer. It's a bit of memorabilia for me. Luke Littler, how big will he be over the next 20 years?
Oh, how big is he already?
Absolutely.
Just turned 18, I think, last month, was it?
Winning £500 million here, there, he's an absolute phenomenon. And in England, you talk about David Beckham's and you go through the different sports, about sporting icons.
Darts is massive
over the generations. Darts is huge. Luke Littler's got a cult following already. He's only 18. Wow, the world's his oyster.
I've literally seen darts players go on the record and say, I've got darts fans, Luke Littler's beyond darts.
Yes.
He's
Absolutely
seriously box office. Yeah. Every time I see a darts match on, if Littler's on, it's I'm watching it. And that's crazy to say because most people just call it a pub game, but this thing is it's ridiculous.
Well, you know what? When I was leaving Win Television, that was back in 2005, I was reading the news and I was backup newsreader to Jeff Phillips. And I remember the boss at the time, I said, look, I'm going to take an opportunity at Fox Sports. They're starting up this new element called Fox Sports Active, which was a precursor to the Fox Sports News channel 24/7. And he looked at me and said, you're making the worst decision of your professional career.
Really?
And he didn't really want me to go. And it was a little bit tense. You're making the worst decision of your professional career. It was actually the best decision of my professional career.
So it turns out, yeah.
Because I've been lucky enough to work with fantastic people, have great bosses, get involved in my bread and butter, which was the newsroom, news reading, presenting, but then go out and start calling rugby league and get introduced to sports like darts and netball commentary and others that have come my way, which would never have happened down here. And yes, okay, it's a bit more travel, obviously, from Fig Tree to Sydney than it is Fig Tree to Mount St Thomas.
You don't mind the travel?
Not these days with podcasts.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Mobile phones whereby you can ring people and do... Really, I look at my car as a portable office. And it might be a bit rude, but sometimes I'll park something and think I'll do that in the car. I'll ring that person back in 15 minutes on the road or whatever. And before you know it, the trip is gone. Sometimes you get to work and you think, wish I had a bit more time in the car.
That's smart.
And also when you're doing commentary, you sort of have time in the car by yourself to think about pronunciation of names, who's playing where they are on the field, where they are on the court, and just go through your commentary processes, which is important time. When I got games in Wollongong, I always turn up late because I think I've got more time than I do. And secondly, I feel a little bit frazzled because I haven't had the time.
Yeah.
It's a 6-minute trip in the car and you're a bit, I'm here now, I'm in work mode. Whereas when you're going from Wollongong into Sydney to a footy venue or a basketball venue or a netball venue, you've got more time. You condition yourself for what you've got to do.
Yeah, yeah. Where's your favourite venue you've commentated in so far?
Look, the new Allianz Stadium is pretty good.
It looks pretty good.
Yeah. And if I went through the different sports that I've done, Wynn Stadium for the darts has been mega. And the fact they keep coming back suggests that. It's the perfect size. About 5,500 in there. The way it's configured, it's probably just under 5, but it's rowdy, it's fun, it's a good venue. So Wollongong does the darts magnificently. When it comes to rugby league, the newest is sometimes the best, and in Allianz Stadium's case, certainly. But at the same time, Leichhardt, despite all its failings, it's got something about it. You go back in time a little bit, and as you bang your head on the metal beam in the commentary box, you think, how many great commentators must have done that over the years? How many people that you've heard and followed in the media must have been in this box? And then you go to other sports like, netball. You get to go up to Sydney Olympic Park.
Yeah.
There's a great atmosphere as well. And basketball-wise, nothing can beat the sand pit and the snake pit. Given this is,
you're right there anyway. It's
but outside of that, Kudos Bank Arena. Shane Heal once said, "This is the greatest atmosphere outside the NBA you'll get." And when it's full with 17,000 people holding their phones and all the effects that Sydney does so well, that's pretty good. An RAC Arena in Perth with the jungle and all the Red Army there going wild about their Wildcats, that's pretty good as well. So I like all the different venues. Parramatta Stadium, it's got a great view down on the ground. So many good memories at Penrith Park, or its many names over the years. Even boutique grounds like Shark Park. Yeah. I think they're all... I enjoy going to them all for different reasons. They all got their
little intricacies in a way.
Yeah. But from a commentary perspective, you like to be in a box whereby determining who's carrying the ball and making the tackle is as easy as it can be. And certainly Parramatta Stadium and Allianz Stadium provide that. The old Allianz Stadium, where they built it, and legend has it they forgot the commentary box. Oh no, we didn't put a commentary box in, so they put it right up the back, and you felt like, well, I'm up here above the eagles and
you're in the heavens,
above any bird life that wants to fly past, and that was hard. I used to always tell myself, don't panic in the first 10 minutes because eventually your eyes will adjust and you'll adjust and it will be okay. But for the first few minutes calling games at the old Allianz Stadium, it was like, my goodness, there are ants running around down there. How can I see who is who here? But it comes to you. Yeah.
You were sort of talking about earlier about sort of that transition from honing in your craft to news presenting, reading and all that, to all the other stuff, the sort of stuff that is spontaneous in a way. How'd you sort of adjust to that?
Yeah, it was testing because you're right. News reading is, the auto cue demands it. It is so governed time-wise that you cannot go on a 30-second ad lib because otherwise the whole bulletin is thrown into chaos. But at the same time, there's a peculiarity about it in terms of the delivery. No stumbles. Make sure the right words get emphasised. You watch great newsreaders like I was a Brian Henderson baby, and I grew up watching him, into Peter Overton, and I've loved the way they deliver the news. I worked with Jeff Phillips for a long time. Before that, Mary Franks at Win Television. And I was lucky enough to sit beside and watch very good newsreaders. And I loved it. I loved that element. When I went to Fox Sports News, when I was doing it at Win Television, you'd know if you delivered the news well or not. Yeah. And I was really captured by that. And when you delivered the news and you didn't stumble and you got it all right and you thought, well, that felt pretty good. It was very rewarding. When I went to Fox Sports News, it was because it was 24/7, the range were a little looser. So you could, with your co-host, delve into a story a bit deeper by ad-libbing off the back of it. And it wasn't ad-lib where you are just giving your opinion. It was still fact-based, stats-based discussion. But generally it wasn't scripted or as scripted. So all of a sudden you're ad-libbing a bit more. I was doing like multiple radio interviews at this stage as I also started to call rugby league. So again, radio is great. Just talk. You got to talk. Silence doesn't work in radio.
No dead
funnily
air.
enough.
No dead air.
And then when I started commentating, again you had to do it. My first game was, I think it was Newcastle Gold Coast on the Gold Coast under 20s game. And I hope I never see that game again, because I remember I got back on the plane to fly home after the game and just zonked out, fell asleep on the spot. It was that much of a mental drain compared to what I had been doing. I was that tested by it. And one thing leads to another. And still you commentate and you go, wow, I'm a long way from where I want to be, or I can do that better. And it's like you're always chasing the perfect game. But it is, you're right. It's a fair step from reading the auto cue to basically being told, okay, on air in 10, cue. And there's no auto cue. You just follow, as they say, the bouncing ball.
Yeah.
See what happens. You've got a screen in front of you, and generally you're referring to that as you watch the contest unfolding in front of you.
So you mentioned your first game you've ever commentated. Do you remember much about it?
I remember Jordan Rankin played for Parramatta, I think, and scored a great try where he kicked it multiple times. At the time I was reading Fox Sports News, I think it was Jordan, and there was an argument going on, soccer or football. What are we going to call it? Because Australia has multiple football codes, union, league, AFL, and what we'd call soccer. And there was a lot going on in the newsroom that, for an Australian audience, we probably should call it soccer, but the purists were saying, no, it's football, call it that. And I said, well, if you call it football, I didn't say this, bosses said, if you call it football, are people going to know you're talking about the round ball game as opposed to their football? So that was in the background, unfolding at the time. And Jordan kicked it a few times, multiple times, and I said, it's a soccer match all of a sudden. Actually, it's a football match all of a sudden, and then tried to go back to soccer, and I sort of tied myself in knots a little bit because of that in the back of my mind, and being a first timer, I would like to call that try again. I don't know whether I actually did it justice as I tried to work out whether I should say it's a game of soccer or a game of football, but anyway, it was what it was.
It happens, mate. I actually had a little stuff up today that was quite humorous in the sport.
Tell us.
So Beth Mooney obviously won the, what was it called?
She ran second in the Belinda Clark medal, but she won she won one day player of the year.
Yes, that's right. Annabelle Sutherland won it last night, and she beat Beth Mooney, which was in my little auto cue today.
Yeah. Or did Beth Mooney win T20 player of the year?
I think so, yeah. She might have won something. Yeah. But the funny thing is, so I said Annabelle Sutherland beat Beth Mooney and whoever else it was. But I saw the M in Mooney. So I said Annabelle Sutherland beat Beth Mooney. So right. I've said meth live on air.
Meth Booney.
And you just got to shrug it off, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And Annabelle Sutherland has claimed her maiden Belinda Clark medal, beating the likes of Beth Mooney and Ash Gardner to be crowned Australia's best female. Do you have a moment like that?
I do, and it's on YouTube if anyone wants to go and look it up. I was reading the news, and I think it was Blue Tongue Stadium, and I called it Blue C-Bomb Stadium.
Sporting teams as well, but Brisbane Roar aren't complaining before the game against Central Coast tomorrow night at Blue Tongue Stadium. The Roar have been forced...
And I didn't even know I did it. I cannot remember doing it. But someone alerted me to the fact that I'm on YouTube. Commentator says C-Bomb on Fox Sports News. And I called it not Blue Tongue, but Blue Worst Word Ever Stadium. And my kids still look it up and have a laugh about it. And I don't know who put it there. I don't know who thought to go to that business. But yeah, I'm online saying the C-Bomb.
It's funny you mention that though, because there'd be times where I'm driving home from a shift and Dad says, oh, yeah, you said this, da, 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 da. And I'm just like, did I?
Yeah.
I don't remember. It's just like you're so zoned in. It just...
I was doing the basketball the other day, and I put like you did, meth Booney. I put it around the wrong way. And by the time I thought, hang on, what did I just say? I know what I said. The game had moved on.
Gone.
Just got to keep going.
Yeah.
And I picture people at home rewinding their television. He said what I thought he said.
And it's not the worst thing in the world, because Aussies just will look at that and just think, that's funny.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people have knowledge of just how much is going on at live sports broadcasting. I don't think they know how much preparation goes into it. And certainly when we're on air, you've got your co-commentators who you've got an eye on and you need to work in with them. You've got a stats screen somewhere nearby that you need to keep an eye on. You've got to follow live sport because it's unfolding. That's what you're actually doing. And then beside that, you've got a monitor that you've got to follow, because if the director takes a shot of the Prime Minister in the crowd, it's no use you not mentioning it and calling some other player as we're looking at the Prime Minister or a star in the stands or a player sideline getting an injury worked on. So you're following a lot of things with your senses. And on top of that, you've got an earpiece in where your producer might be giving you information. I like to listen to the director also, because the director in my ear, I don't really hear what he says until there's an emergency, until I hear him raise his voice, get excited, or quick get a shot of Bill Bloggs injured down the back corner, camera 6, and all of a sudden you know what's coming. So you add all those ingredients in there. And if you're tired or a little bit sick, there's another ingredient. So there's a lot happening, and it's easy for Beth Mooney to be Meth Booney, trust me.
Like even just something as simple as news reading on the TV, people, they look on the camera and they see, okay, there's a guy in a suit reading an auto cue. But what you don't realise is you've got to get your font size right. You got a foot pedal underneath the table that most people don't realise. They think it's just automatic. You got the lights. You obviously got your earpiece, and you've got your mic. You got to make sure it doesn't poke out through your jacket.
Or brush
as well.
On something that's going to give a rustle sound. And on top of that, you're also got half an eye for what we call return vision, so what's going to air, so that if you see a wrong item or you realise that you're coming to the end of your sentence and the ball hasn't gone in the back of the net yet, you might slow down that last sentence or add a little bit so that the viewer at home gets to see the one to strike actually find the goal if the vision hasn't been cut appropriately to your words. So, there's a bit there.
There's a bit going on. Well, mate, we're talking workloads. You own a cafe as well, do you?
I did, yeah, we did. All Good Things Cafe in Wollongong, and best and worst thing we did probably. But I love that side of it because I'd generally been only an employee. Now you're an employer and you get to see small business, and you feel a rush when the cafe's busy and the cash register's ticking over. And I really enjoyed that part of my professional life. Hard work in terms of hours, but my wife did most of it, so I just parachuted in there and talked sport with people, and then
I love that.
chuffed off to work. So it was good. Our kids worked there as well, so it was a real family affair when we had it there. So it was good, and it gives you appreciation differently than you have if you're only an employee in life. I think I certainly learnt the value of good employees. Also learnt how successful small business owners must have worked to survive. I think it's such a valuable part of my life to be a small business part owner. I look back on it fondly, but it's pretty brutal, right? Cafes are hard, long hours. We were open from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. We were not just a cafe; it was like a health food store as well, which we were big on. So we were still serving coffee sometimes at 4:15 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
so
no one does that.
You need a big. We didn't have a big employee base, but you need a good employee base, people you can rely on, and people ringing up last minute saying can't work today, doesn't work, because then you got to fill in.
Yeah, 100%. When did you guys open that?
Just recently. So it was good while we had it, and very good.
Yeah, right. Well, we're going to rewind it back. We've spoken about your childhood growing up and all that. What inspired you to get into sport media, sport broadcasting? Was it from a young age, or did you sort of get to like year 12 and then decide from there?
I'd always loved sport, and I'd always loved television. Mum and Dad used to joke, you're going to have square eyes, because I watched so much television. But I loved playing sport as a kid. Never any good at it, obviously, but just enjoyed the camaraderie of being in a team. I loved being outside. I was active, but playing soccer, I played rugby league, played union, would play golf, play tennis, whatever I could get my hands on, I would do. So I enjoyed sport, and I had a passion for television. Be it the Ray Martin midday show or Prisoner on a Thursday night, anything that, sport, more and more of it, World Series cricket. So when I was finishing high school, you had to put down your list of priorities. And I enrolled for a business course, got accepted, and did a day of business at Western Sydney University. And the same day I started there, I got an acceptance for sports journalism, which was being offered at Canberra, which was a sports studies / journalism course. And because at that stage it was selective, and I was lucky enough to fall into one of those spots, I thought, well, given it was selective, I'd be mad not to take that opportunity. So I went to Canberra, did sports studies / journalism, and then after that applied for all the Sydney newspapers and television stations, but totally different media landscape back there. And I don't blame them for not hiring me either. I'll be honest, like very, very green bloke out of Canberra Uni. So I went to the Central Western Daily newspaper in Orange, worked with a couple of great people called Kate Bowyer and Dave Miller. And if it wasn't for their understanding, I might not have survived either. Yeah. And did about 4 years in local newspapers out there. We had a big Sunday newspaper that stretched all over the Central West, and I could play footy on Saturday afternoon and then go to work at the newspaper afterwards and work through to about 1 o'clock in the morning, getting the Sunday newspaper together. But I always wanted to go to television because that was my fascination. So I went to Win TV Orange and they were hard years. They were probably the hardest years of my working life because we were based in Orange, but we were covering from Lithgow to Dubbo, from Mudgee down to Young, basically. So it was a huge area to cater to. And we had a great cameraman, great cameramen, plural. There were no camera lady operators back then. It was all men. They were a great bunch of fellas, but we'd jump in the car and we'd drive to Lithgow in the morning. We might drive back and do a story in Bathurst on the way back through, deviate down to Cowra, then come back to Orange. I'm writing stories in the car. I'm thinking about the vision that we've recorded so I can match the words to the pictures. Then you'd run into the voice booth, put down 3 voices and cut stories. It was full on. And I look back at it now and think, how do we do that? And then the next day you might be driving to Dubbo via Bajerabong to do a story on the picnic races, preview. A lot of kilometres, a lot of riding in the car, feeling car sick. And but you asked me earlier on about work ethic, that stems from working with Dad in the chemist shops. Well, spending time at Win TV absolutely had to do that. And then when I came to Wollongong, I was doing Wollongong sport, but also presenting Central West sport and sometimes news, and Riverina sport and sometimes news.
Right,
so I'd get back,
whole range.
Yeah, I'd get back from a day filming, interviewing, recording, and writing, then have to race into makeup at 3:15 for a 3:45 record of one service, then a 4:30 record of another service, come back and do more editing, make a mad rush to get to the 6 o'clock. And I'd often run in to read the sport during the ad break before sport, having just finished the last story. And there's a great mate there, great mates plural, Adam Kerr, Michael Redmond. They were 2 editors who were so patient with me, wanting to push the boundaries and have as much content as possible, often getting the final story cut during the ad break and racing in and putting it in the machine as I did the first few stories and then got to the one at the end that they just finished cutting.
Yeah, there you go.
Full on.
Take a little back to when you were at the Central Western, and I know myself personally it's tricky to do. How did you find, you just mentioned applying for all the Sydney newspapers, how did you find breaking into the industry?
Really hard. I remember back then it was basically writing letters, sending a cover letter with a brief resume saying, I'd like a start, could I get a start? And then, you might send out 5 letters on a Tuesday and next week you were racing up to the letterbox every day. Did I get a reply? Did I get a reply? Did I get a reply? No. And at the time you're devastated. You think, how am I ever going to get a start here? But in hindsight, I look at it and think, okay, I wonder whether I would have survived or what job would I have been given. Where would I have ended up had I been accepted by one of those newspapers, radio stations or TV outlets? Where would my career have gone realistically, given it was a totally different era, totally different generation? And ultimately, did the path I go on lead me to a better outcome eventually anyway? Well, I'll take the positive approach and say yes.
100%.
Yes, it did.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's like I'm sort of just thinking about like my experience as well. So how I ended up at Fox Sports wasn't from a Seek application. It was actually through your old producer, Brian.
Right, Brian Vanderwacker.
I met Brian at Bathurst last year.
Great fella.
Yeah, he literally just flicked me the news editor's email address.
Did you know Brian before you bumped into him at Bathurst?
No, so it's even funnier how that works out. So the lady, Alison Drower, who hired me, and she was our senior journo here, her son is Zach Bates, who races in the Super 2, and he's racing in the Super Cheap Wildcard for Supercars this year. And I just went up to Bathurst for a weekend, just caught up with them. And she knew Brian because obviously Brian was at the races and all that now, and introduced me to Brian, and then away you go from there. It's just crazy how it works out. Did you ever have sort of like a moment like that in your career?
Well, I've had many. And you go back to that day where I started a business course and I got an acceptance from Canberra Uni. If I didn't say, you know what, I will take that opportunity, that sliding doors moment. Dad said to me, well, you've got to decide tonight, do you want to continue on doing business or do you want to go to Canberra? Because we don't have much time to sort it out. And I said, no, if it's a course that you've got to be accepted into, I'll take that opportunity. And I said, I'll go to Canberra and do sports journalism. So that night was like a sliding doors moment in the life of Matt Russell. Otherwise, I might be running the RBA or something right now.
Imagine that. Can you imagine that?
Put the interest rates down.
Well, you might have called it. Who knows in a couple of weeks. But how was it like moving down to Canberra as a young bloke?
Yeah, it was good because I'd already been to boarding school in Bathurst.
Oh, of course.
So I lived outside of home and fell in with a good group. I was obviously staying on campus in the residences there, Arscott House. I remember it vividly. And I don't know how much the actual course set me up for my professional career, but the 3 years at uni certainly set me up for life. And I suppose if you're doing life okay, then you're in a position to do your job well.
Yep.
So you learn how to meet a deadline. You learn how to party and keep yourself under control.
Sleep deprivation at work.
You learn basically to be a disciplined adult when you should be a disciplined adult. And if I didn't go to uni, I don't think that it would have unfolded for me the way it had. Even though I look back and think I learnt more, and I said this to the bosses, I learnt more in the first 3 weeks working at the Central Western Daily than I did in 3 years when it comes to media. But at the same time, those 3 years were really valuable.
Did you find it very theoretical at uni?
Yeah, theoretical and sort of sometimes box ticking. But there were lessons there. I did courses where I thought, how the hell is this going to serve me during my working life? And sure enough, it hasn't.
Yeah.
But getting the assignment in on time, applying yourself to pass the tests, making the 7:30, 8 o'clock tutorial after a night with your mates the night before, all those things add up and breed habits that then set you up later on in life.
Yeah, 100%. It's a good little perspective. Yeah. Mate, you mentioned Bathurst. How'd you enjoy living in Bathurst? I love that town.
Loved it. Was there for 2 years at the Scott School in Bathurst, and I was at Lumia High School in Western Sydney near Kent Lynn. I think I got about 13% in a maths exam once. Mum and Dad said, right, that's it, you're gone. Get out to boarding school. So I went out where Mum had gone to teachers college, so that they had a bit of a familiarity with the area and the school. And once I got involved there, it was a bit hard starting in year 11 because most of my year had been there since year 6, since the start of their high school life. So you were a new boy. And I never really felt like anything but a new boy, despite their acceptance. You always felt like you're one of the late arrivals. But again, it was a rich sporting environment. You could play all the cricket and rugby you wanted. There was always someone wanting to watch or talk about whatever sport you're involved with. So that was really good. Great part of the world. And I remember when Bathurst was on as a student, you'd be woken up to the rumble of Mount Panorama. You'd be laying in your bed.
How far away from it were you?
We're about, I don't know, maybe a few Ks. But that was enough to you would be woken by the rumble of the V8s. And then as you were going about your day, you would hear this dull roar in the distance. And I thought, wow, this mythical Mount Panorama and this great race that you've heard about and seen on telly, it's just over there. Yeah. How close is that and how cool is that? And then when I was working at Central Western Daily and Win Television, so for the best part of a decade, obviously Mount Panorama was an event you covered. And
it's
you
the biggest event out there.
The build-up. It was a big. You were covering a legitimate national and international sporting event, which when you're a regional journalist, you don't get the chance to do very often. So I gobbled that up, and I remember doing stories with Glenn Seaton that I really enjoyed, Mark Scaife. All the drivers were fantastic. Peter Brock. Now, Peter Brock was a bloke who everybody wanted to speak to and had every right to be impatient, run down, worn out, weathered. He was the most giving, accepting, cordial gentleman that I thought is a measure for every sports person I've dealt with since then. Because I'm a young journo, I certainly don't know V8s like Peter Brock does, so I'm deliberately asking questions that I think can lead to a good story, but not trying to be some motorsport guru that I'm not. And gee, he was good, but invariably they were all really good. And here's the thing that stayed with me: people often ask, who's the best sports person you've ever interviewed? Who stays in your mind? Well, there are many for different reasons, but if I could group all the motorsport drivers together, before they throw themselves around Mount Panorama, a scary track at 60 Ks, let alone 300, they're sitting in their cars giving you interviews 30 seconds before they're 300 Ks an hour down Conrod Straight. You know, there's no, he's got a game tonight, or no, it's not his day to do media, or he's not quite up to it. No, they realise the media is part of their sport, and no matter how many interviews they've done, no matter how many times I've answered the question, no matter what's ahead of them in 30 seconds that's absolutely scary, I'll give you time. Let's go.
They understand. They understand it. There's no athlete that quite understands media and media coverage quite like motorsport, motorcyclists, anything. They understand the sponsor commitments. The sponsors need those visuals. And I feel like some other sports can sort of learn a thing or two.
I think they're changing, but you're right. Back in the 90s, we've come a long way since then. But you're right. I always use them as an example, and it was so good. And I did a hot lap. I was saying this on radio yesterday. Actually, I remember being lucky enough to get a hot lap. I can't remember who the driver was, but I thought I was going to crash every corner. It was that fast, and the braking was that late, and then the acceleration out of the corner was that fast.
So physical.
I felt a bit crook getting out. So anyone who says, motorsport isn't a sport, well, you try sitting in a V8 supercar for any significant stint. You come out as a weathered human. You've been beaten up internally, and they lose a lot in perspiration. I admire what they do.
Yeah, well I was talking to Cody, who was on before you, about it, and he says cabin temperature's 60 degrees in there, and you've got 3 layers of full fireproof clothing. And not only that, they say when you hit the brakes at the chase, it's equivalent of 100 kilos of a leg press just through one leg.
Yeah,
alone.
That doesn't surprise me.
So, and not only that, you're throwing the car around, the G-forces going through your body. You're trying to stay in the one spot, and people try to say they're not athletes.
No, absolutely. It was a lot of fun covering Bathurst, and I remember I was willing Glenn Seaton to win, because I don't think he'd won Bathurst.
No, never did.
Never did. And such a good fella. And I'd done a story with him about his dad, and he was there to win it. I'm watching and hoping he could succeed. And I was going to do a story to follow up what we'd done during the previous week, and something went wrong. Poor bugger missed out again. Yeah. And felt sorry for him. So never won it.
Never won it to this day.
Yeah.
No. So from the country to the coast, how did that come about? It was just internally at Win TV?
Yeah, well, it was because of Win Television. They needed a sports reporter in Wollongong, and I was actually playing rugby with the mighty Orange Emus in the Central West. Loved my time out there, and I said no to them. I said, I'll stay here, thanks. It's
did you really?
Life's pretty good out here. So I went to Orange thinking I'll be there for 2 or 3 years. I ended up staying for nearly 10, and it was purely because of footy. I couldn't play league. I had to cover league on a Sunday. That involved going to the different games. I had to be available to get the paper out on Monday morning. But I could play rugby union because I could then go into work after the rugby and get the Sunday paper ready later that night. So for some reason it worked. So I played rugby, enjoyed it, had a great group of mates out there, and they said, come down to Wollongong, we need a sports reporter. And I said, nah, I'm staying here. And then they rang back later that year and said, if you don't come now, you're never coming. You might not be there for much longer either. So I sort of said, okay, I'll come. And I remember telling the mates, okay, I'm going to Wollongong. This is my last season. And we made the finals that year. But I remember the last few games I was playing, I don't know why, I'd never been nervous about injury. I'd never worried about injury at all, didn't care. But in the last few games, I thought, I hope I don't get injured here, because then that will set back the move to Wollongong, and what do I do then? And it was the first time, funnily enough, in 10 years of playing rugby that I couldn't get out of my head.
You had fear.
So in the end, I finished up and thought, okay, good. I got to the finish line, no dramas, and went to Wollongong. And then after a year in Wollongong, they needed newsreaders, and I was filling in for Jeff Phillips, who was doing the sport. Mary Franks was doing the news. Then Jeff went to news, and I got sport. And Jeff was a great sports fan, still is. Still rings up to talk about the Hawks or the latest footy story. So to work with a newsreader who has a passion for sport, I was blessed, because he wanted to buy into my sports break and had a few little tips, and he was a great person in terms of English language, plurals, singulars, getting it right. That was a big help. But also, like in the ad break beforehand, he'd make you relax by talking about whatever was in your sports segment.
Yeah.
And back then, live 6 o'clock news was held in a certain sort of esteem. When you were only doing your 5 or 6 minute sports break, you wanted to really nail that.
Yeah.
So it was fairly nerve wracking.
Yeah.
And I look back now and think, I wish I could have been more relaxed about doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
But back then, it's a different media landscape. The 6 o'clock news is held in some sort of esteem, and you don't want to stuff it up. Then when Jeff was away, eventually I ended up reading the news as well, which I really enjoyed. And there were even some times when I'd do news, sport, and weather. And to present the whole half hour, I remember that and thinking, wow, I would never have thought that I would ever have done that. There's been a few moments in my career where you go, I'd never thought I would have done that.
Yeah.
And, it will be reading the entire Win news one night, 6 o'clock. That's fairly, that was rewarding. Then there might be calling a rugby league game for Fox. Never thought I'd do that.
Yeah.
Calling a first grade rugby league game. Hang on, what's going on here? This is ridiculous. Calling an NBL grand final series. Where I actually sat down afterwards and thought, Matt, you just called an NBL grand final series. Did you ever think you'd do that? So I try and just enjoy what you've achieved sometimes.
Yeah. Soak it in. Take a moment.
Just take a moment.
Yeah.
And think, okay, well, that's pretty cool. Now move on. Go to the next challenge. But at the same time, don't just gloss over what you've done, because there's so many downs along the way and setbacks that unless you think about the personal successes and what you deem to be an achievement, then it can be a fairly long road.
You sort of put into perspective as well as to what you do. Like you spoke about, like the moments you sit back and you think about it. I've had two of those. One of them was my first radio news bulletin, and I'm just sitting there thinking, like, particularly like 2 months before that, I was sitting. I didn't know what the hell was going to go on, and then the role came up, and next thing you know, I'm somehow on air, which I couldn't imagine. Like on radio, like growing up around here, 23 years old I was at the time, and it was just couldn't believe it. The second one was my first ever Fox Sports News bulletin last year, and it was at the time the plan was, all right, get you reading an hour each shift, and we'll do it for a month and then go from there.
Yep.
So the first one was an hour, and the problem was because you start at 2, the bulletin wasn't until 8, so I had 6 hours where I started thinking about this.
Yeah.
And then you get 15 minutes in and the laptop's frozen on me because it wasn't connected properly. So I'm reading this prompt and not knowing what's coming next. But then you get through it and then it's all nice and cruisy once you settled in. But I remember the last story from that bulletin was a feature story about a female sailing team. And it was a big chunk, 5-minute story. And there was that moment there where it was nearly done. I was sitting there, had a moment to myself, and I sort of sat back and I thought, I came home from school every day watching this channel, seeing what was going on, and I just presented
Great
a
story.
bulletin on there.
Great story.
Which is so cool. But like it's like everyone has those moments.
And for anyone watching this or listening to this, they should learn from that, because you might be watching or dreaming now about something in the future. Well, it can happen. It can happen quickly when it comes. But that's a great story.
Yeah. Oh, not that this is about me anyway. So move to the goal. So it's fascinating because you've always said yes to things. Yeah. But the one thing you nearly didn't say yes to was what ended up bringing you here.
Absolutely. That's a good point. I've never thought about that. I've always said yes, but I said no, and I was going to come to Wollongong originally.
Yeah,
and
wow.
I suppose I looked at it saying yes to Orange and yes to my footy mates and yes to the lifestyle I was living. I realised once I was there that some of the other people you worked with were there just for a purpose, couldn't wait to get out and couldn't wait to get down to Sydney or up to Brisbane or Melbourne and into a capital city media environment. And I sort of thought, well, if you're going to be here, you might as well enjoy being here.
Yeah,
enjoy life, immerse yourself in this community. And therefore, the 3 years aren't long. They actually go really quickly because you're enjoying your life. So I actually probably, because largely of sport and the people I'd met through that, worked out really quickly, okay, well, if you're here for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, who cares? Enjoy life. And that's what I did. Whereas I saw other people, I've got to be in Sydney, got to be in Brisbane, got to be in Melbourne. It was a long, agonising 2, 3, 4 years for them because they just didn't want to be there. They wanted to be somewhere else.
Yeah.
So, enjoy the moment and worry about the future when it comes. Absolutely. And, I go back to my first bulletin, reading the sport on Win News. I remember Mary Franks was presenting the news. I walked in with my scripts at about 6:05 and sat off in the corner and just had this, I was that keen to get it done, that nervous, And I must have put Mary off because she had this sports bloke
Just
sitting in the corner.
Focusing on the prompter.
And these blokes aren't meant to be in here until 6:20. What's he doing here now? But I was just there ready to go and read my scripts about 400 times. And we had a bit of fun when Mary left. Jeff and I were there, and Jeff wasn't immune from popping pictures and scripts in my pile of scripts. So as I turned over the next one in my periphery, I could see a picture or a few words that he'd snuck in there. So we had a lot of fun on set, actually. One day a television light fell off while I was reading the news. Actually, it was Jeff who was reading the last news item. It was about a shooting, actually. The reason I remember that is because the light fell off the roof, brushed my ear, ricocheted off my shoulder and landed on the ground and made this almighty bang. And when Jeff got home, his wife said, "Are you putting sound effects in your story now? There was a huge bang while you were doing the shooting story." He said, "No, Matt was nearly killed. The light fell off. If that big light had landed directly on top of my head, I don't know what would have happened."
Oh, God.
But Jeff got through the item, through to the ad break. We looked at each other and said, "Holy hell, that nearly hit me." And other times we had a power blackout. And every time we came back on set, miraculously, the generator would kick in. There'd be this sort of low-level light come up. Jeff would get to the intro and throw to the tape item. And we think, we're there, that light's back. And then, boom, plunged into darkness again. And we did this news bulletin not quite knowing whether we were going to have to come back and say, "Well, sorry, we've got a power outage. We're in complete darkness."
Yeah,
but
wow.
we didn't. We had some good times up there.
Yeah. What are some of the highlights, mate? I'm just thinking about, out of all the stories you could have a loud bang, a shooting story. What shooting story was that? Because
it was a news story. I don't know what it was, but there was some shooting in Wollongong. One incident I really remember was I had to do what they call LVO, live voiceover, which is where you read for 30, 40 seconds
while there's footage going.
Now, another mate, former colleague, Jason Newenoff, had done a gymnastics story, and the poor young gymnast at the end of her run-up had bounced on the mini tramp, tried to do a somersault, mistimed and gone straight into the wall and slid down the wall like it was a Hollywood movie scene. And Jason finished his story with this shot of this girl tumbling smack into the wall and then sliding down. And he'd done it lightheartedly and signed off. Jason Newenoff, Win News. And I was watching it. I couldn't help laughing. So they came back to me and I'm facing with this 40 or 50 second read. And in television, once you start laughing, it's very hard to get rid of.
I had it with Meth Booney today.
Yeah. So the harder you try not to laugh, the more you laugh. Now, Jeff had swiveled in his chair and was partly at the vision of the girl sliding down the wall and partly at me. After every paragraph, I took this deep breath, started laughing, started reading again, deep breath, started laughing, just get through the next paragraph. People watching must have thought, this bloke's drunk. He's had 6 schooners at lunchtime. They would have realised why probably I was laughing because of the mishap, the poor girl in the gymnast outfit, bouncing off the trampoline and getting it wrong. But that was pretty scary because you think, if I laugh too much, like, what's going to happen here?
Yeah, you're stuffed.
But the more you try not to laugh, the worse it gets. And I've heard other newsreaders say that if you get attack of the giggles, it's very hard to get rid of it. You almost need to have your laugh and then move on.
Yeah.
Get it out of your system.
Yeah.
Because a laugh wins. If it's in there, it's coming out.
Yeah. People can relate to that. Like, again, I'm going back to Meth Booney. I was lucky that 10 seconds later I had an audio grab.
Okay.
But I get 5 seconds after Meth Booney and I'm chuckling. I'm just like, everyone knows what I just said. I'm just going to own it.
Yeah.
But if I didn't have that audio break, I don't know what would have happened.
Lucky it wasn't Carmichael Hunt, or you might have done what I did a few years ago.
Mate, so how many years were you down here with Win?
I came here in 90... testing me now, 98.
All right,
and
I
went
won't
to
tell you
Fox.
what year I was born.
Oh, yeah, I imagine. You were 2000, baby?
99,
just.
So
I came here in 98 and I went to Fox in 2005.
How did that come about?
I was, because of the workload at Win Television, I enjoyed it, but it was all-encompassing. And also, because you're a one-man band covering Illawarra sport, when does the sport happen? Happens Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So what do you need for content? You need to go out and do the interviews and learn a bit about the sport and the event that you then got to cover during the week. Even though you've got some stringer cameramen, you've got to go to the grand finals or the soccer games or the visiting superbikes or whatever's on. So I was working Saturday and Sunday days off, partly to make the week easier by having some content ready to go. So it was 7 day a week stuff. And then Monday to Friday was getting to work 8 o'clock. I'd get home at 6:45. It had been a really stressful afternoon, hurrying to get my Win Wollongong bulletin done, reading Wagga, reading Orange, after a day of travelling, interviewing, cutting, writing. Then the weekends come, young family, you got to duck off. Just going to do the local soccer this afternoon. I'm going to do the league this afternoon, do interviews, and it was too much. Sean Burns was a head of news, really good, very supportive, tried to make it easier and did. But in the end, it probably burnt me out a little bit after 7 years of doing that.
Yeah.
And
I think he was the head of journalism at
uni
when
Burnsy,
I was there. Yeah,
great fella. And so one of my work colleagues, I still remember her name, Kiralee Tilvern, said that here Fox Sports News is advertising for a position. So I applied, got an interview, got the offer. And it was scary because I'm living in Wollongong. This job's at the time in Pyrmont. It's a long way.
It is.
Long way.
Yeah.
In my old rusty Ford.
So going up Mount Ousley every day.
Yeah. But I used to drive to Sutherland and catch a train to Central, then walk over to Pyrmont. As I said, the boss at Win at the time, worst decision of your professional career. Ultimately, it's been the best. I've been very, very lucky to be afforded the opportunities I have.
So how were the shift times at that time? Because obviously, like right now, they're either super early or you're super late. How'd you sort of work that before the train time?
It was if I remember correctly, it was a 4 a.m. start. So
even earlier now.
When I first started, it was a sort of training session for 3 or 4 weeks.
Yep.
But then once we got going and we started Fox Sports News Active, it was a 4 o'clock start or a 2 o'clock start. Either way, I used to have to drive in because if 2 o'clock we didn't finish till midnight or thereabouts, so probably too late to get a train home. Starting at 4 o'clock, too early to get a train in, so I had to drive. Finding a park in Pyrmont was a nightmare.
Yeah, even at 3:45 or whatever it is.
I had a few sneaky places I found.
Yeah.
So that was good. Couldn't afford to pay for parking. Didn't want to pay for parking.
Biggest fraud of all time.
Yeah. It was an early start. And funnily enough, the 4 a.m. starts. That my alarm would go off at 2:30. I'd get in the car at about 2:55, and I'd get to Pyrmont in time for my 4 o'clock start.
It hits different when the alarm goes off at that time.
So now back to SEN radio again. If I'm doing brekkie, it's a 3 a.m. alarm. In the car about 3:30. Get there 4:45, and then do an hour's prep, a few live reads, and then you're on air at 6. So
yeah.
I don't know whether I could do it permanently.
No, yeah.
But on a fill-in basis, I get away with it.
Yeah. Well, you completely have to adjust your whole your sleep pattern, your life, when you have your dinner and everything like that. So
Yeah.
it's all right for a couple of weeks. You can live with it for a couple of weeks and you get your afternoons.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it full time, it's pretty heavy.
I find that when you're then doing Thursday night rugby league or, there'll be NRL tonight, Monday, Tuesday, which doesn't finish till 6:30. Both ends gets very hard to manage. It's the turnaround that brings you unstuck.
Yeah.
And of course, so much sport. This Friday, for example, I'll start radio at alarm at 3 o'clock for Brekkie Radio, and then the Hawks won't finish until I'm doing the Hawks game.
Yeah, you'll be on.
That'll finish about 10 o'clock, so it's a fairly long work day.
Yeah, I'll probably see you there.
With a nap in between, probably.
Yeah, there you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I always go back to, Dad in the chemist. He was there 6 o'clock in the morning. He was there 9 o'clock at night.
Can't complain when you're just chatting about sport.
That's right. And, he was there mixing potions and filling scripts and organising the shop. I'm there talking about sport. I got the easy end of the bargain.
Yeah, 100%. If you're doing like SCN in the morning and then a late game, for example, how many hours of sleep do you somehow get in between? Because it can be tricky sometimes.
I'm getting lots of advice on that. I'm not a fan of an afternoon nap because I don't wake up very well. It takes me a long time to wake up. So I prefer to fight on through, but sometimes I just can't do that. And my fantastic producer Mindy says, just have 20 minutes. That's all you need. Lie down, zone out, take 20 minutes, set your alarm for half hour max. You'll bounce back having not gone into your deep sleep stage.
Yeah, REM or whatever it is.
Yeah, so I tried that. I think she might be onto something, but I've also had the alarm go off and just go bang, switch it off, and have 90 minutes and wake up, and for the next 4 hours I'm a walking zombie and a cranky walking zombie.
Yeah, you get like the only way I can sort of fix it is either go straight for a run and punish yourself straight away and you're feeling like crap, but then you'll come back, or if you just go for a walk for an hour until it wakes up, and then you need a coffee with that as well, and then it just wrecks you.
I can't have an afternoon coffee. For some reason, I'm a one coffee in the morning. That's it. I find a trip to the beach wakes you up.
Yeah,
jump in the oceon, swim around.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, that's good. And luckily, the weather at the moment is very kind
nice
to that.
It's nice this week. Yeah. Who'd you work with at Fox Sports News when you first got there? The original crew.
I should have brought in, we've got a T-shirt that I think Lara Pitt made up of the original Fox Sports News team over the first few years, because there was a reunion a few years ago.
Yeah. That's a lineup.
There are so many people that I've worked with through Fox Sports News who you then see bob up in different media roles across the landscape. And people talk about coaching trees in sport, like people who've served under Craig Bellamy, people who've served under Wayne Bennett, etc., etc. Well, like Fox Sports News and other media ventures have something similar. You see people who've worked at Fox Sports News now bobbing up here, like Nick McCardle worked there, Lara Pitt worked there, Adam Peacock worked there,
Mel McLaughlin.
McLaughlin. I could be here for an hour. I wasn't going to mention anyone because I knew I'd leave people out.
Go over it.
But there are so many people who've worked there. Dave Carlson, Bernie Cohen,
Daniel Garb.
Danny Garb, on and on we go.
Over at the UK doing the Premier League, so imagine that.
As a consumer, you would have seen lots of people reading the news.
They're like title.
Yeah.
In a way.
And they've gone around the world, not just around Australia, covering the Super League in England, covering darts, doing it all. So, and again, 24/7 news service. You got to be fairly versatile, fairly nimble, fairly hardworking. I think that's why it's a good setup for other ventures down the track.
Yeah, it's like in
Jess Yates is another one. She covered Bathurst and does league, and versatile, does it all.
Does everything, yeah.
So there's been a lot of people come through there. Warren Smith did some news reading there, aside from his rugby league commentary. It just goes on and on.
Yeah, it just seems like such a catapulting platform for everyone. It's just like you can't think of one person who's been on there and hasn't really gone on to do.
Well, the slogan was Fox Sports News, we're on all the time.
Yeah, and it worked.
So
it worked.
Yeah.
What were some of your best memories there? Is it sort of like stories where you look back on and you think, oh, that was a pretty hectic night? Or
there was a rewarding day for a sad story. Sad in that it was a sad chapter in thoroughbred horse racing. Now, we were on the day the horse flu broke, the horse flu story. Who was running racing at the time, Peter V'landys. I was reading with Matt Thompson. There's another one. Matt Thompson now working
he was
in
at
Channel
Fox
9.
Sports News as well.
Fantastic. Did the betting show with Matty Thompson.
Oh, there you go.
And so we were co-news reading, good mates, and the horse flu story broke. And we thought this is the big story at the time. Now, we weren't really a racing channel, and they sort of shied away from racing a little bit, given we had racing channels on the Foxtel platform. But it was news, big news. The Australian racing scene was being shut down. This flu would kill horses. We don't know what's going to happen. So we rang Peter V'landys early, might have been for an 8 o'clock bulletin, and we didn't really expect to get him, but he said, no, I'll come on. So Matt and I did a phone interview with Peter V'landys, who spelled out the dire situation. He said, but the landscape's changing all the time. It'll be an hour-by-hour thing. And we said, Pete, do you mind if we give you a ring back in an hour and just see what's happened? Give me a ring, I'll see what I can do. We rang Pete every hour, and guess what he answered?
Every hour.
Gave us 5 minutes, told us how the landscape had changed. And, we stayed on air, crossing out to people at the racetracks, to different owners, trainers, jockeys, what's going to happen to the industry. This is Armageddon for horse racing in Australia. But I always remember Peter V'landys, just a little humble news service at the time, Fox Sports News. It wasn't, Channel 9, 6 o'clock service or 7 or 10. It was Fox Sports News. And we rang him on the hour. He picked up his phone and gave us the latest.
Yeah, wow. I
remember being there, obviously, in the fallout. Our first year was Benji Marshall's...
05.
Flick pass try. There was the Ben Cousins saga at the West Coast Eagles, which I remember Fox Sports News was all over, because we had a Melbourne office and a Sydney office, but we presented out of Sydney. So many big stories. Olympics. I remember all the 100-metre finals that we covered, and just how that was at the height of Usain Bolt.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, wow, we're watching a once-in-a-generation athlete here. I thought, Carl Lewis might have set the standard.
And for work.
Yeah, I remember finishing work at Fox Sports News and walking down to the pub on the corner overlooking Darling Harbour to watch the men's 100-metre final, where he won in a canter. And I remember just looking at the other colleagues and thinking, this bloke's incredible. And he's going to be on our news service tomorrow. And we were off air by that time. It was after midnight. But that was pretty special. So I could be here for hours. So many great sports stories. And often I'll see now a former athlete interviewed, and I think, I remember that by virtue of the time at Fox Sports News. I remember covering that. I remember that now. And it's... It's still happening. Fox Sports News still there. It's changed over the years.
Well, they accept anyone now. They accept
anyone, apparently. They accept anyone. Mind you, the standard wasn't set real high by the people they accepted.
I don't know. I think it's going all right. I think it's going okay. And that's the best thing. That would have been the best thing about it. Like live 24/7 was advertised anyway. But the crosses and everything, because obviously at the time media landscapes changed, but you would have had so much staff everywhere. You could have crossed any single moment.
It was a really vibrant newsroom. So we had a row of presenters, the three of us or four of us, not just the ones presenting currently, but the ones who were going to come on for the next shift. There was a bank of producers who were compiling stories, telling journalists what jobs they had to do for the day. Then there was a group of journalists, and often they rotate a little bit. Some would be a producer today, others would be a reporter for the day, and sometimes you were presenting, sometimes you were reporting. But it was this long room with a studio at the end, just full of like-minded men and women who love sport, working really hard and churning out. We basically did an hour to 2 hours on air, then half an hour off air while we turned around a bulletin, then go again. So it was as much live television as you possibly could do. And the budget was probably bigger than it is now. And you look back and you didn't at the time realise how lucky you had it.
Yeah, that's the glory days.
Because as the media landscape fragments, as there are more and more podcasts, stations, way to consume your news, then obviously advertising goes in different areas, budgets shrink, and as a result, newsrooms like Fox Sports News are forced into some sort of rationalisation, which has happened multiple times. And it's really sad. Low points of your career are seeing colleagues who you really like, who are bloody good at their job, who for no reason other than their contract is up at the wrong time, or their bosses are forced to make cuts across the board, that they have to go.
Yeah.
And I've survived a few of them. Not for any other reason than I've probably got lucky. Timing has been right. I've been fortunate enough to maybe have a few irons in the fire in terms of doing a bit of rugby league commentary or being involved in other areas apart from just Fox Sports News. But yeah, so many great people have been forced into an uncomfortable situation when they had to find a different gig.
Yeah.
And most have done it magnificently.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming you would have been doing NRL tonight around COVID, were you?
Yeah.
Were you around it? What was COVID like?
I was on the night.
That was crazy.
I was sitting beside Brent Reid,
Yeah.
Fox Sports News. We were doing NRL tonight. And I remember I think it was me, Megan Barnard, Brent Reid, maybe someone else. And we were doing an intro or having a chat, and Reedy interjected and said, "Oh, guys, some breaking news. It's off. The league won't happen this weekend. They've called the competition off because of COVID." You think, my goodness. So many thoughts go through your mind. Probably some selfish. So what does that mean for me? What does that mean for rugby league? What does that mean for Australia? What's happening?
My work's gone.
Around the world.
Yeah.
It was a big moment. I remember it vividly. But that story had the best finish because I was there when Peter V'landys and the NRL said, we've got to stop it. Probably the government said, you've got to stop it.
Yeah.
But then rugby league was the first sport back, first contact sport
May
around the world to return.
I think it was, if I remember correctly.
Something like that. So we were made to take annual leave. Originally it was annual leave, then when that ran out it was half pay. So they were interesting times, but I was blessed, not for any other reason than rugby league got back.
Yeah,
so
the one sport.
I got back to work. And the folklore has it that V'landys said to his team, we need to be back by this date. The team came back and said, well, we probably can't get back until July, August.
Everyone thought it was insane.
No, you didn't hear me. We're coming back on this date. Make it happen. And he did. And we had fake cardboard cutouts in the crowd. We had fake crowd effects. We had temperature testing. We had distancing during interviews. There were so many remarkable measures, but under V'landys' guidance and plenty of others involved in the NRL, they just found a way. They found a way when others were saying, too hard, can't do it, not safe, blah, blah, blah. I loved it that the sport I was working with said, no, bugger this. We'll do it.
Yeah.
We'll just find a way. And yeah, that very much aligns with my thinking and my politics, my background. Just find a way. Get it done.
Yeah.
Don't take an excuse. Make it happen. You know, and so from sitting beside Brent Reid saying it's off to sitting there doing NRL tonight saying we are back to at the end of the season saying, in all my time covering sport, I've never been so proud of rugby league as I am now.
Yeah.
To get back this season, to prove the critics wrong, to lead the way for the rest of the world. Like little old humble rugby league with all these problems and all these critics, look what you've done.
Yeah.
You know, you've showed the world. So it's pretty cool.
And you're a part of it.
Yeah, very small part, but I was a lucky part of it. I got to go to work because it was back.
Yeah. Do you remember your first game back, like how weird it was?
Absolutely. It was so weird. I remember we had to cover a game in Melbourne. And, of course, no flights running.
No, you would have been done it for Sydney.
So I had to drive down. And I had...
Oh, you drove?
I had a essential workers permit. And I'm so looking forward to the cops pulling me over and saying, listen, sir, you're a long way from Fig Tree. Come down to the local lockup. But I had the essential workers permit, which was a great source of mirth for my family. Hang on, you're a footy commentator. You're an essential worker.
Essential.
You're an essential worker. That's a rort. It was actually very handy for the cafe, which also stayed open.
Yeah.
That I could buzz around Sydney doing pickups and doing deliveries as an essential worker.
Yeah.
I probably would have qualified as an essential worker given that our cafe was also distributing groceries. So that would have got me off the hook as well. But I remember driving around Sydney and it was just a ghost town.
Yeah.
I'm on roads for 25 minutes not seeing another car.
Yeah.
And I was actually thinking, I have to be pulled over by the police. Where are they? There's no one here.
I used to think that every day going on the road, mid-lockdown and all that. It's like, I'm just waiting to get pulled over here.
Yeah. So I actually thought to myself, I'm one of the few people who will see Sydney as an absolute ghost town. I'll drive around all hours of the day and night. And Sydney is a ghost town. And, it was pretty weird, wonderful. I don't know how to describe it. Not wonderful.
have its, like, I don't know, there's some serenity about it, sort of like the world was just resetting. It was sort of like everyone took a moment just to take a breath, and there was sort of a serenity about that as well.
Yeah.
But then it got to 2 weeks later, and you're just like, right, we got to get back into things now.
Yeah. I think it was the best part of 2 months.
Yeah.
So I think they spent about 8 weeks working out what to do, and then we were back, and away it went.
Yeah. So how'd you go from being on Fox Sports News, getting into the commentary from there?
I was reading the news, and Adam Cox was a producer at Fox Sports. So Fox Sports News was on one level. Above us was all the live sport production, and Coxie was a great producer up there. And he said to me one day, we'd like you to audition to do some rugby league commentary. And I said, I'd love to, but I don't know whether I'm good enough. I don't think I can do it. I don't know. And all these other people who'd done commentary had dreamt of it for years, like calling paddle pops, going down streams, or having childhood memories of having to be a sports commentator. I'd always been newsrooms, news reading, broadcast news. So I said to Coxie, I don't know if I'll be any good, mate, but I'll have a go. And I did it. I don't think I was any good, but I got the job. And once I went and did the first few games, I was hooked. It was in my system.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, wow, okay, this is really interesting. This is fun. And I've got a long, long way to go, but I want to be better. I want to be better.
Yeah.
And, you know, the under-20s was a good competition to start in because...
that would have been peak Holden Cup around that time
Yeah, absolutely. So it was 2009. Matt Thompson had done the first year, 2008. Then he went on, and I did 2009 onwards, and eventually go over to NRL. And, if you have your time over again, then we'd have done a lot differently.
Yeah.
But it gets in your system. And now... doing live sport, you've got a few rules that you really want to apply yourself to. I just so enjoy doing an OB, as we call it, or outside broadcast of live sport, and thinking at the end, well, I think that game and that sport was portrayed in a really good way by Fox. I think we nailed that. It's very addictive.
Yeah, 100% is. Like, I can't think of anything better. Like, being a sideline actually at the footy, it's my dream job anyway. But like to be able to say, people around 20,000 people around you paid to be here. Yeah, you're getting paid to be here and talk about it.
And you're trying to let the people at home enjoy it, be informed, not ruin it for them. Like, your worst nightmare is to make it about you.
100%.
It's about the athletes. It's about the viewers at home. It's about marrying them up, and both existing and enjoying the process. Sideline's very different than play-by-play, which you got to discover as you go, and different sports do it differently. Different bosses want different things. That's another thing that you'll have one boss saying, I really want this. Other sports might have different bosses saying, we would like this. So to some extent you are beholden to them, but a bit more than that. After you do it year after year, you learn a little bit yourself, and sometimes you think, I know exactly what I need to do, or I think I need to do. And there are far more experienced, more credentialed people than me involved as well, who still provide lessons. But it is fun, and it's really rewarding when it goes well.
So what sort of lessons? Do you guys do like debriefs after every game?
Not really. Well, you'll get phone calls or messages regarding talking too much, straying away from the bread and butter of what you're there to do. You'll cop a straighten up every now and then, which I think is fantastic. Often you're your own worst critic.
A lot of the time.
Like, why did I say that expression 3 times in 10 minutes? That's lazy. You could have done that with more emphasis and enthusiasm. That moment only came once. Why didn't you let that breathe a bit more there? So watching back is agonising at times. Like, it's never really comfortable listening to your own voice, I don't think. But you try and do it so you realise where you're at, where you've got to be better, and that sort of stuff. Yeah,
and it's not something that can be taught at uni or school, for example, the art of commentary. It is because it is an art, really.
And the other little thing about it is that some people will love something, other people will hate something. You're never going to cater to everybody all the time. I've mentioned how the bosses are different. Some bosses will want one thing, some bosses will want something else. Often your producers have never called live sport, so they don't quite know what you're going through, even though they're there to help and they're inevitably great people. I like talking with other commentators because you sort of got this familiarity with what you're going through and what your mindset is and how you could approach a situation. But working with the experts, the co-callers, who are often former athletes, that's such a humbling experience. You've admired their careers, you've marvelled at what they've done, and here they are treating you as an equal, sharing a commentary booth with them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it actually flips. As the more experienced broadcaster, you're gently trying to help them in what they can look to do. And the fact that they're open and willing to listen and ask and chase that information, it's humbling at times. And I'm so lucky. I'm not going to mention names because I'll be here for the next 4 hours. So lucky to work with so many great expert callers.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was actually going to ask you who you enjoy calling with the most. Well, if you could pick one.
Well, I'll tell one. I'll mention one because it's a good story. So, growing up my era in rugby league, I was watching the one and only Steve Roach rampage for the Balmain Tigers.
Another local boy here as well.
Another local boy, so that made it even better. But so I was coming through school, uni, early in my professional working career as blocker was playing footy. Balmain, New South Wales, Australia, big personality, big name, big player. And now I host a show with Blocker. We speak most days. He's a great fella, very friendly, affable. You get to know his wife, Kath, his fantastic sons and family. And, Blocky and I did a lot of work together, do a lot of work together, and you fall into a comfortable rhythm. So I've done a lot of work with Steve Roach over these. And if you'd told me back when I was coming through that you'd one day work with that bloke there wearing, number 8 for Balmain, I wouldn't have believed you.
Yeah.
In fact, when I was out at the Central Western Daily, I did a story one day of Blocker and Ciro coming and visiting the Robin Hood Hotel where there was some sort of celebrity appearance. I went out there and interviewed them and did a story, and lo and behold, 20, 30 years down the track, here I am sharing a commentary box with him.
Yeah.
And, Blocker, by his own admission, only played about a decade, 185 games. He's been in the media for 3 decades.
Yeah, he has,
I said, Block, you're not a former player. You're a media professional. Like, you've been in radio, television, you've done newspaper columns for 30 years. You've been in the media for 3 times longer than you were an athlete. It's a fair achievement.
Yeah.
And he's still going strong.
Yeah.
And still loving it.
He doesn't seem like he's too hard on himself. He can take the nick out of himself.
Yeah.
I'm sort of thinking, every time I think Blocker, I think, and obviously I think what's coming. The Me Think Amazing call. Do you remember that on NRL Tonight? You said something.
Oh, yes.
And he's going, Me Think Amazing. And it's got every time I hear Blocker's name, I think of Me Think Amazing.
5 years, decent sample size.
Yeah.
The win percentage has gone up to 74%.
Me think it amazing.
There you go.
Hey? Are you serious?
Blocky knows that media, essentially at the end of the day, people watch sport and sports media for fun, for a distraction, for a diversion from the headaches and the mundane in regular life. And any chance to have a bit of fun, Steve takes the ball and runs with it, which is he's fantastic at that. And really, that's the core of his success. Not taking himself too seriously. He has every right to be a proud man because he's achieved a lot, and he is. But he's also capable of having a laugh at himself and with others, and he's a joy to work with.
He comes up with some brilliant one-liners every now and then, doesn't he?
He does. And if I started rattling them off, we'll be here for about 3 hours.
Yeah, for sure.
He starts all the functions he does with, "It's my financial pleasure to be here."
I love that. Classic Blocker. If you could pick one NRL game that really stands out to you, I won't go like Holden Cup or New South Wales Cup because, again, we can be here for hours. But if there's like one NRL game that stands out to you that you've called, you think like, wow, I called that. What was it?
Well, there was... The one that stands out probably is always your first, and I called Nathan Hindmarsh in game 300. Again,
you called the
I wish I could go back and do it again because, very green, nervous first-year rookie. I would have loved for Nathan's 300th to be called by a more seasoned campaigner, if I'm being honest, right? But that stays in the memory, and he got beaten by a field goal.
I remember it vividly.
So, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Penrith v Parramatta. Someone took ill. I was doing a game, I think, at or nearby, and they said you got to go down the highway and call the game at Penrith, which I did, and I'll always remember that. But yeah, I'd like to do it better. And I was sidelined for Sin Bin Sunday, South Sydney v the Roosters.
Yeah.
Don't think I've ever experienced as much drama as that.
That would have been hard work on the sideline.
And it was. I was up and down, checking, reporting, huge crowd, at a fever pitch, with plenty of involvement for me sideline without having to manufacture any of it. It was just wild. And that's a really vivid game. I remember being in Melbourne when Joey Leilua ran on and got a firework in the eye of a big finals game.
First round game,
yeah.
I think Bailey Simonson might have subbed in or something like that.
I thought that might have been a finals game, but
I remember. I think that was the day that there was that controversial foot on the line thing.
That's right.
That Canberra got that try order for.
Yep. So that
I think that might have been the year they made the grand final. Actually,
that game stays in the memory, and there have been so many over the years. I remember doing one very early on where James Tedesco did his knee. Early in the game, a West Tiger at Leichhardt. I was doing it with Greg Alexander. This exciting youngster goes down in the opening stages, and I think that game had a thrilling finish as well. So you never quite know what you're going to get. You'll go into a game where you've got the scene is set for an absolute bell ringer, two great form teams, and you think, oh, that game was a dud. Yeah. Other times you'll have teams 14 and 15 in horrible form, and they'll turn on the best theatre. So you never know what you're going to get, and accordingly, you've got to go in with no preconceived ideas. Yeah, just call the action that unfolds in front of you.
Yeah, and it sort of makes the art of prepping even a bit harder like that. So what's sort of like? I could ask you what your week is like in the lead up to a game, your days in the lead up to the game. Like, sort of, if you can, sort of take us in the shoes of
So Monday,
Russell.
Tuesday, NRL tonight.
Yep.
I'll use rugby league as an example. Monday, Tuesday, NRL tonight, which by the time you wake up Monday morning, catch your breath from the weekend, do a bit of planning for NRL tonight. You ring your producer in mid-morning, then do the trek up, start writing the show, start talking with the producer, and those 2 days disappear pretty quickly. Tuesday afternoon, Teams Tuesday. Sometimes if I'm real keen, I'll get home that night. I used to write out manila folders down the spine, the two teams either side, and then fill it in as the week goes on. That became too labour intensive, and I'm being dragged into the digital age of trying to enter it in a computer, so you don't need to start from scratch every week because it was unsustainable. Yeah. And I was probably doing too much prep, tying myself in knots a little bit, being too desperate to get your prep away rather than just calling the action. Yeah, it's a criticism of me, by me, early on, if I go back and do things again. So now write the teams out on a piece of paper. You've got both teams in front of you, and then have a method whereby you've got appropriate stats at an eye's glance, often memorised. You might go through team changes beside that, relevant information further out. So as the week goes on, you might do, it's hours of prep for each game, whereby you're calling the action, but in front of you, you've got a safety net whereby the players, their statistical background, all their information is there for you when you need it. So if this bloke scores 3 tries, well, how many tries has he scored this season? How many tries has he scored in his career? When did he last score a hat-trick? Where was that? Did you know that he came back from 2 ACLs, 8 years? Things like that. Yeah. You just build a list of, and digitally now, I'm sort of able to transfer it from games to game a little bit better than I did when I was just writing it all out in a manila folder. I still stick it to a manila folder. Yeah. So I've got it fairly close to me, but that's what I do. And when I'm doing NRLW, it's the same format, just the women's game rather than the men's game. And that's the way it works.
So what does game day
Everyone's
look like?
got their own system. Yeah. And that's all that matters. As long as you've got a system whereby you've got the information you need at your fingertips. There's no wrong or right system, and I just think that my system to start with was too complicated.
Yeah.
Game day, I feel like a player saying that.
Yeah, but it does, doesn't it?
But they're all different. Like on Saturday, for example, I do a radio show in the morning and then hurry to said venue, and then I try and stay, despite the fact you might have a morning gig, you raced through Sydney traffic to get to the game, I try and stay calm. Because if you get worked up, wound up, then it comes across in your voice. You're a little higher pitched.
Yeah.
Your words are a little bit
tighter.
raced. Stay calm and just let the game carry you rather than your mood and feelings at the time carrying you somewhere you shouldn't be. So I like to start really, hey, I'm pretty relaxed here. Let's see where this game takes me. So that's what I like to do. And I like to have the prep done early. I don't like to be scrambling prep on game day because, invariably there'll be a distraction or something will happen and you're left short. So I always try and get the prep done the day before the game. And if I've got multiple games, I might start on Thursday getting ready for my Sunday game because I know that the head start I make there will help me on Saturday night.
Yep.
And then on the Friday, I might turn to the Friday night game and the Saturday game. I find that if you try and do the Sunday prep before the Friday night game, it mixes with your head. You want to have a bit of flow there. So, again, everyone, you'll work out your flow during the week. But it's fairly full on. People say, I wish I had your job. And you say, oh, I'm very lucky, but thanks for watching and great to have you as a fan. You think, do you know what goes into getting ready for this?
Yeah,
do you really want my job?
Yeah.
You don't just rock up at 10 to 7 and call the footy at 7:30. It's a bit more than that.
Yeah, and the other thing as well, and that no other profession has, if another profession stuffs up a work or something, whatever.
Yeah.
If you stuff up live on air, you've got hundreds
of
thousands
a whole
of
world
people
out there with
who are
phones in their
with
hands,
phones and clipping up
ready
and all that.
which is, you got to welcome the feedback. That is what it is. Not everyone's right. What is hard is when people give you criticism that you know is wrong.
Yes.
And it's not worth buying into on social media. It's not worth biting back. You just got to let it go, invariably. I have fired back a few times when people say, what about the way Matt Russell's pronouncing name A? Idiot, do your prep, racist bastard, or something like that. And I have said, well, you know what? I asked that person to his face. He wants his name said that way. So back in your hole.
See you later.
So that's something I really try and do. If there's a name that I don't know how it is said, I try and ask the player to his or her face. And they might say, oh, it doesn't matter, whatever you want. And I said, no. How do you say your name? And then I might say, is that the way that your family generally says your name? And they might say, no, we say it like this. How would you like me to say your name? I can say it. And then you push them a little bit. They say, here's the pronunciation, and you roll with it. And then some people hammer you for saying it incorrectly.
Yeah.
And you think, well, sorry, if he wants to be called that, he's playing. He scored the try. She scored the winning try. I'll say their name the way they want to, not the way you want me to.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So how do you go from NRL to, hey, I'm courtside calling the NBL 20 minutes down the road from home?
Well, luckily, they only cross over for a short period.
Yeah, briefly.
But I'll be honest, it's just work.
Yeah.
You've just got to watch the games beforehand so you know the teams. You've got to do your homework. You might go to the training sessions. You make phone calls. It's just work. And when I say work, not really work, getting ready for sport.
But it's fun.
But, you just got to... I'm pretty good at it now, going from league to basketball back to league. It does get hard crossover periods. Sometimes there's a league game you're meant to be working on the same day there's a basketball game, or vice versa. Speak to the bosses and say, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
And go from there.
Yeah. So what sort of phone calls are you making, sort of getting prepped there?
Well, basically, you might speak to coaches, you might speak to team managers, CEOs, you might even ring the players if you can get access to a phone number to check their pronunciation or a bit of background on them that they're happy to give you. But these days, with so much information online, you can generally get most of your prep done that way. And Fox Sports Stats is fantastic. They give you a lot of help with their statistical notes each week, which range from just cold hard numbers to what they call match notes, which are some pertinent and interesting facts. And the basketball does the same. And then on game day, that's where you get access to team managers, ground managers, players as they're about to do their warm-up. Can I just check your name, etc., etc. So, yeah, that's the way.
Well, this has been quite the chat, mate. So much so that I had a couple of little quick-fire get-to-knows at the start that I just completely missed.
Okay, let's do it.
Because we were just so engrossed. So
quick-fire
we've got this one called the Gong Pod Mount Rushmore. So if you can nominate one person, we've got, let's say there's a hypothetical Mount Rushmore right behind you there.
Yes.
And you can nominate one person, anyone, someone you're a fan of or anything, someone you've worked with. Who is it?
Blocker Roach.
Blocker Roach.
Put Blocker Roach on Mount Rushmore. If I could have more than one, I'd go Blocker Roach, I'd go Matty Campbell along with Glenn Saville, and Matty Horsley. There's 4.
That works out all right. There we go.
There's 4. So rugby league, basketball, and soccer.
And the Wolfies to finish off as well. Yeah. Outside of the All Good Things Cafe, where's your favourite eat in Wollongong?
Oh, that's hard. That is hard. Needing Ruby.
I've never been there.
Yeah, it's a really, we've never had a bad meal there.
Your favourite event all time that you've ever attended? It could be sport, could be wedding. Oh God, voice crack. Could be a wedding, could be anything.
In Wollongong,
anywhere.
AC/DC concert at Accor Stadium or Sydney Olympic Park. Akadaka rocked that night.
What year was that?
2010.
There you go.
2010.
Oh, so not that long ago.
I think it might have been a 40th birthday party.
Oh, there you go. you think we don't remember it too much. What's one thing people don't know about Matt Russell?
That I love true crime. If I wasn't in sports media or broadcast, I could easily have been a police officer angling towards detective work. I love that side of investigations, working hard and finding the little piece that unlocks the whole jigsaw. I really love it. The hunt for serial killers in the US and what eventually brings them unstuck, I'm fascinated by.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, including most recently the Golden State Killer who was caught by advances in DNA technology.
There you go.
So Joseph DeAngelo, they finally catch up with him. Yeah.
True crime shows are just so popular these days. I've got to hear best thing about your job, but I feel like we've done that so many times. Now, this is a tricky one. Obviously, you're meant to be so unbiased in your work. Who's your footy team?
Well, West's Magpies. I'm happy to say that.
Oh, okay,
so West's Magpies were my football team. I used to go to Arana Park when I could. I had my car nicked from outside Arana Park once, and I used to watch the Magpies, and I loved the Magpies. I got Magpies jerseys, but when they merged with the Tigers, I didn't feel like it was still the Magpies, so I thought I'll find another team, and I haven't.
Yeah.
So I'm a rugby league widower.
Yeah.
Don't have a partner
New South
anymore.
Wales Cup fan, I suppose.
I love calling the Magpies in New South Wales Cup. And when the Magpies play the Newtown Jets, I think, hey man, I'm in my groove here.
Yeah, that's retro.
Because the first game I went to, I reckon, was a Newtown game with Grandpa. So I reckon, a bit of family heritage there. Newtown Magpies, that floats my boat.
Yeah. And this is sort of like. This question is sort of just one that I just sort of thought of because obviously I'm sort of in the industry. If you had advice for a young bloke looking to break in to your industry, what would it be?
Don't underestimate the value of hard work.
Perfect. And final one, and you might have already just answered this, your favourite music artist?
Oh, yeah, I'm a sucker for AC/DC.
Yeah, you're a hardcore rock?
Yeah, maybe it's the fact that I grew up in Western Sydney. I'm a Westie through and through, and AC/DC seems to be linked to that. But I've got a real spread of music on my playlist, from Tom Petty to a bit of Adele, but every second song seems to be AC/DC.
Yeah, mate. Fantastic, Chad. Thanks for coming in. Appreciate
it.
It ended up being like an hour and a half, I think, in the end.
No dramas, mate. You'll need to chop that down. Chop it down.
Oh, I'll be all right. I'll let it run. Let it run.
Let it run.
Anyway, thanks, mate.
Good on you.